At 20, Imani and Naomi Brooks had $11 between them, one duffel bag and a mother 6 months in the ground. They had a green sleeping bag that zipped into one, which was the only reason they still slept warm. A toothbrush each, a comb they shared, and they had each other's faces, identical down to the same chipped front tooth, earned the same summer off the same porch step. That was the whole inventory, 20 years old, and it fit in a bag a child could carry. Down the boulevard, on the corner of Mississippi and Vance, the old Hardaway ice and coal plant sat dark behind a chained gate. It had been dark 2 years, ever since the man who built it passed. Somewhere inside, past the loading dock, one heavy door had been frozen shut that whole time, and nobody in South Memphis had a reason to open it. The girls didn't know that. They didn't know any of it yet. By the first hard frost, they would, and the men who laughed the loudest would be the first ones to go quiet. That morning, there was only the heat, river-damp Memphis heat that sat on a person's chest before sunup and made the whole city smell of warm asphalt and the Mississippi running 2 miles west. Imani woke first. She always did, a few minutes ahead of her sister, like she'd been born to scout the day before Naomi had to walk into it. They slept behind the gas and go on Mississippi in the gap between the dumpster and the cinder block wall, where the night manager let them stay if they cleared out before the morning crew clocked in. It wasn't kindness exactly. He just didn't have the heart to run off 2 girls who looked like somebody's daughters, which they were, just nobody's anymore. Every morning they did the same things in the same order: wash at the gas station sink, take turns, one keeping watch, roll the sleeping bag tight and tie it with the same frayed bungee. Imani kept the money. Naomi kept the documents, what few they had. Their mother's death certificate folded inside a sandwich bag, 2 birth certificates that proved, if nothing else, that they had once been wanted enough to be written down. Their mother had been Yvonne Brooks, and she had passed the week after Christmas, 6 months now, long enough that the casseroles had stopped coming and the world had moved on. Nowhere near long enough for anything else. Yvonne had worked herself thin in 2 kitchens and a nursing home, and one cold morning, her heart simply set the work down. The girls had been holding a hand each. That was all the story either of them would ever tell about it, and they told it to no one. They had been taken by the state at 10, sent to different homes in different counties, the system splitting twins the way only people who never loved one could. Imani landed with a family in Millington that had 3 other kids and not much patience. Naomi bounced through 4 homes in 5 years and stopped unpacking her bag at the second one. They wrote letters the state didn't always pass along. They aged out at 18, 2 years back, each with a trash bag of clothes and a bus pass. It took their mother's funeral to put them in the same room again. Now they had only each other, 2 of everything and half of nothing. Odell Pruitt was already on his corner when they came around front. He was there every morning in a folding chair outside the shuttered barber shop, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a newspaper he never seemed to actually read. 70-some, an ice route driver back when the route still ran, and the closest thing the block had to a memory. He watched the girls go by. He always watched a beat too long, and they had never once figured out why. That morning, he lifted 2 fingers off his cup, a small salute, and Imani lifted hers back. Miss Doris from the AME church caught them near the bus stop with a foil pan still warm inside a plastic bag, a chicken and rice casserole. She did this twice a week and always said the same thing, that she'd cooked too much, as if 2 grown women couldn't see clean through a kindness that gentle. "Made way too much again," she said. "You'd be doing me the favor." Imani took the pan with both hands. Naomi thanked her, and Miss Doris held Naomi's wrist a second too long, looked like she meant to say something, then decided against it and walked back toward Vance. On the way back, they passed the new signs. Mercer Gateway Group, clean blue letters on whiteboard, bolted to the chain link around 3 lots that used to be a tire shop, a duplex, and a corner store older than the girls were. All gone now. a flat field of gravel and a sign promising a future nobody on the block had been asked about. A man in pressed shirts had been around for months, taking pictures of buildings that weren't his. Folks said his name was Mercer. Folks said he was buying the whole corner, quiet as water coming up. It was Naomi who saw the notice, taped inside the gas and go window between a lottery poster and a flyer for a lost dog, a single county sheet, surplus property sale. Saturday, 9 o'clock, the courthouse annex on Adams. Lots the county had taken for back taxes, condemned buildings nobody wanted, sold as is cash only. Most started at a few $100s. One did not. Lot 19, the Hardaway Ice and Coal Building, 1400 Mississippi Boulevard, condemned. Minimum bid, $10. $10. They had 11. Naomi read it twice, then read it out loud to Imani. The two of them stood there in the heat, doing the kind of math that only makes sense when a dumpster is the other option. It's condemned, Imani said, reading over her shoulder. It's condemned with a roof, Naomi said. It could fall on us. So could the sky. At least this one's ours if it does. Naomi looked at her sister. $10, Mani. We have 11. When was the last time we could afford a thing by a whole dollar? Imani didn't have an answer for that. A building was a roof. A roof meant a door. And a door that locked would be the first thing either of them had owned since they were children. Saturday came hot and white. The annex on Adams had a back lot of folding chairs and maybe 40 people, contractors and flippers and a few old men who had come for the show. The girls stood at the back in their hoodies, charcoal on Imani and maroon on Naomi, the duffel and the rolled sleeping bag at their feet because there was nowhere to set them down and no one to leave them with. A county clerk named Hatcher ran the lots off a clipboard. Thin man, reading glasses, the particular boredom that curdles into mean by mid-morning. He moved fast, a storage lot, a burned-out house, a strip of weeds by the rail line. Then he reached 19. Lot 19, Hatcher said. Old ice house, Mississippi and Vance. Condemned, no warranty. County's not liable for whatever falls on you inside. $10 minimum. Anybody fool enough? He said it like a punchline, and a couple of the contractors gave him the chuckle he was fishing for. No hands. The place was a liability with a roof, and every man there knew it. Imani felt Naomi's hand find hers down between their hoodie sleeves, the old signal, the one they'd used in waiting rooms and courtrooms and the back pews of strangers' churches. One squeeze meant stay, two meant go. Naomi squeezed twice. Naomi raised the $10 bill. It took Hatcher a second. He looked over his glasses at the two girls at the back. The hoodies, the sleeping bag, the duffel, and whatever crossed his face started as something like pity and settled into a smirk. You girls know it's condemned, he said. Not a question. Can't live in it. City will cite you inside a week. We'd like to bid, Imani said, steady. It cost her something to keep it that way, and she paid it without letting the price show. It's $10, Hatcher said, slow, like he was explaining it to a child. You understand it's not a house. It's a problem somebody pays to knock down. We heard you the first time, Naomi said. That was when the crowd laughed. It wasn't cruel exactly, which was almost the worst part. It was easy laughter, the comfortable kind people let out when a thing strikes them as too absurd to be sad. Two homeless girls bidding on a dead man's ruin. Someone in the second row said, loud enough to carry, Lord, let him have it, and that earned a second round. Imani felt the heat climb her neck. She did not look at the floor. She had learned young that looking at the floor was how they won. So she looked dead at Hatcher and lifted the bill an inch higher. $10 going once, Hatcher said, playing to the room now, almost enjoying himself. Going twice. You sure about this, sweetheart? Naomi didn't blink. Sold, Hatcher said. Lot 19, $10. God help you both. They paid at a card table by the door. A different clerk, a tired woman with a gray cash box, took Naomi's 10 and counted out the paperwork. A quitclaim deed, a receipt, and a bill of sale, an old carbon form the county must have kept in a drawer since before the girls were born, the lot typed in, the date stamped in faded red. Naomi folded it to put it in her pocket, and that was when she saw the back. Someone had written on it. Not the county, not typed. A line in pencil, soft and gone gray with age, in a careful hand that slanted to the right. For the cold ones, when they come home. Naomi stopped folding. She turned the form front to back, like the front might explain the back. The front was a county form. The back was older than that, and somebody had meant it. "What is it?" Imani said. Naomi showed her. They read it together, heads tipped close, the way they had read everything since they were small, for the cold ones, when they come home. Neither of them knew what it meant. Neither of them knew it had been written the year they were born. That would come later, from a man who still had reasons to weep over it. Outside in the gravel, an old man in a feed cap was lingering near the gate. Not for them exactly, just hanging close to a thing that used to matter. He watched Naomi slide the deed into her pocket. "You bought the ice house," he said. "Not a question either. Silas Hardaway's place." "You knew him," Imani said. Everybody knew Silas. His mouth worked like he had more, then settled for less. Ran that plant 40 years. Kept it cleaner than the bank kept its vault. He looked at the two of them, one face printed twice, and something flickered behind his eyes. "Funny thing," he said. "Quieter." Silas always kept two of everything. Always said one was never a real number. He tipped the cap and was gone down Adams before either girl could ask what that meant. They didn't go straight to it. They spent the rest of that Saturday the way you spend a day when you're afraid of the very thing you wanted, in pieces, circling it. They ate the last of Miss Doris's chicken and rice on a curb. They split one bottle of water. By the time they finally walked the long way to the corner of Mississippi and Vance, the sun was dropping behind the warehouses, and the sky over the boulevard had gone bruised and gold. The street was emptying the way it did near supper, porch lights coming on one by one. A train moaned somewhere down by the river. Two girls in a sleeping bag walking toward a building the whole neighborhood had written off, and not one soul on Mississippi Boulevard would have guessed they were walking toward the only thing anyone had ever set aside for them. And there it was, theirs. The Hardaway ice and coal plant stood 4 stories of dark brick against the dusk. Hardaway still ghosted across the top in paint faded near to the color of the wall behind it. Boarded windows, a loading dock chained at the mouth, a water tower on the roof like a rusted crown. Even shut up tight, the building breathed out a faint chill, a smell of old ammonia and wet stone and something mineral underneath, the ghost of 100 years of ice. It was the largest thing either of them had ever owned, and it was a corpse. They stood in front of it the way people stand at a graveside, small and quiet, unsure they were even allowed to touch it. The duffel and the rolled sleeping bag sat in the weeds at their feet. Across the street, in the blue dark, the ember of a cigarette glowed once outside the shuttered barber shop, and then went still, as if someone had been waiting to see whether the girls would really come. Naomi still had the bill of sale folded in her fist. $1 left between them. The deed to a dead man's ice house, and nowhere on God's earth to sleep but inside it. Imani found the cut in the chain link where someone had peeled it back years before and held it open. "Come on," she said. "It's ours now. Can't get arrested for breaking into our own house." Naomi almost laughed. Almost. She ducked through after her sister into the high weeds and the long, cold shadow of the building, toward a door that had been waiting on the two of them a great deal longer than either one knew. The weeds were taller than they had looked from the street, dry summer stalks that came up to their knees and hissed against their jeans like something breathing. Imani went first, the way she always went first, holding her phone out ahead of her with the flashlight on and the battery already worn down to a sliver of red. Naomi came behind with the duffel on one shoulder and the rolled sleeping bag under her arm, and she pulled the chain link closed behind them out of an instinct she could not have named, as if the night might follow them in. The loading dock rose up out of the dark, a concrete lip chest high, the big bay door chained and padlocked the way the front gate had been. But beside it, set into the old brick, there was a smaller door, a man door, the kind a worker used 100 times a shift, and the lock on it had gone orange with rust, and the wood of the frame had been drinking Memphis weather for 2 years with nobody left to stop it. Imani put her shoulder to it, easy at first, then less easy. The screws did not so much break as give up, sliding out of the soft rotted wood with a sound like a held breath letting go, and the door swung inward on a darkness that breathed out cold. That was the first thing, the cold. It was July in South Memphis, near 90 degrees at midnight, with the river running damp over everything. And yet the moment the door opened, the building let out a long breath of air that raised the hair on their arms, cool and mineral and old. It came up out of the dark like the place had been holding it the whole 2 years, saving it, waiting to give it to somebody. Naomi felt it move across her face, and she stopped on the threshold without meaning to. "You feel that," she said. "I feel it." Imani's light swung into the gap. Building's been dead 2 years. Got no business still being cold. It's an ice house, Manny. It's a dead ice house. But she went on in anyway, because that was the other thing about her sister. She walked toward the things that frightened her. Always had. Like she could get there first and make them safe before Naomi ever had to look. Inside, the little phone light was a coin of brightness in a great deal of dark. The ceilings went up and up, lost above them where the beam could not reach, and the walls, when Imani put a hand to them, were not brick, but something softer. Cork, sheet after sheet of it pressed and nailed flat, the way they used to insulate a place meant to hold winter through a southern summer. The floor was wood, gone gray, and over it lay a thin skin of sawdust that had been swept into drifts in the corners and never swept out. Their feet made almost no sound. The whole building seemed to swallow sound, to take it the way it took the heat, gently and without hurry. They moved through it slow, room opening into room. The great compressors stood silent along one wall, machines the size of automobiles, their pipes furred with a pale old frost that had never fully melted even with the power 2 years off. There were tanks set into the floor, deep square tanks lined in metal, and Imani's light slid across the surface of one and came back wrong, and Naomi realized the tank was not empty. It was brine, heavy salt water that did not freeze and did not warm, and the cold of it sat in the room like a presence. Pipes ran everywhere overhead, looping and turning, some still wearing collars of ice in the dead heart of summer. The air smelled of ammonia and wet stone, and underneath all of it, something faint and clean and almost sweet. The smell, Naomi thought, of 100 years of ice. The ghost of every winter the building had ever made and sold and sent out on wagons and trucks to keep other people's food and other people's dead. People used to come here, Naomi said. Quiet because the room asked for quiet. Whole city. Before everybody had a freezer. You came here for your ice. How you know that? Mama told it, said her grandmother sent her with a nickel in a wagon. Naomi turned slow, the duffel still on her shoulder, said the man would chip you off a block and you'd run it home before it melted on the boulevard. Imani didn't answer that. Their mother was a country neither of them could go back to anymore, and they had learned to step around the borders of her careful, the way you step around a sore tooth with your tongue. But she filed it away, the wagon and the nickel, because it was the first thread of a thing that would later become a rope, though she could not have known that yet, standing in the cold with $11 spent down to one and the dark pressing in on a coin of light. They found the office at the back, up 3 iron steps behind a glass door that had somehow never broken. And the office, when Imani's light swept it, was where the building stopped being a ruin and started being a man. Because somebody had loved this room. You could see it even under 2 years of dust. A roll-top desk stood against the far wall, the wood oiled dark, The slats of the top rolled half down and stuck there. A calendar hung beside it, turned to a month 2 years gone, the picture above the days a faded photograph of the Mississippi at flood. There was a coffee cup on the desk with a brown ring dried hard in the bottom of it, set down one ordinary morning by a man who did not know he would not come back for it, a chair worn to the shape of one particular body, and along the whole left wall, floor to shoulder height, a bank of small wooden lockers, dozens of them, each with a number stenciled in white and a little brass latch. The lockers the icemen had used to hang their coats and keep their gloves and their lunch pails through the working day. Naomi set the duffel down. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The room had the stillness of a place where something was kept. Somebody just... Imani started and stopped. Somebody just walked out of here one day, like he was coming back. He didn't know, Naomi said. No, he didn't. They went along the lockers slow, Naomi trailing 2 fingers over the latches, and that was when she found the first of the marks. On the face of one locker, low, somebody had drawn 2 short strokes in chalk, 2 lines side by side, soft and white and half rubbed away by time. The number 2, the way a child counts it before they learn the curl of the figure. She almost passed it. Then she found another, 3 lockers down, and another. Not on every door, only some, scattered along the bank like a code. 2 pale strokes again and again. The same hand each time. 2 lines. 2. Manny. Look at this. Imani brought the light. The 2 of them stood there with their heads tipped close, the way they had read everything since they were small. The bill of sale that afternoon and the lost dog flyers and their own birth certificates. And they looked at the little chalk 2s marching down the lockers of a dead man's ice house, and neither of them could have told you why their skin prickled, only that it did. Means 2 of something, Imani said. Means 2 of something to somebody, Naomi said. You have most likely already begun to guess what the 2 strokes were counting. Hold on to the guess. It will be a while yet before the building tells them, and longer still before it tells them everything. And when it does, it will undo them both, right there on the cold floor. It was on the wall above the desk that Naomi found the key. A single nail had been driven into the cork, and from the nail hung a length of ribbon, and on the ribbon hung a brass key. The ribbon was the kind a girl ties in her hair, narrow and once bright, though whatever color it had been was long gone to a soft no color, gray going to nothing, the way old ribbon does. The brass of the key was dull but unworn, the teeth of it sharp, a key that had been hung up and waited on rather than carried and used. It turned a little when the cold air moved, swinging on its nail above the dead man's coffee cup, and there was something about the smallness of it, the hair ribbon, the care, that made Naomi's throat go tight without permission. She did not take it down. She felt, standing there, that it was not hers to take, not yet, the way you do not pick a flower off a grave even when the grave belongs to no one you know. She only looked at it, a brass key on a girl's hair ribbon, hung where a man could see it from his chair every working day of his life. There's a door it goes to, Imani said softly. She had drifted to the back of the office, where a passage ran off into the deeper dark, and her light had found the end of it. Naomi. There's a door back here it goes to. Naomi came, and at the end of the short passage, the beam laid itself flat against a door that was not like the other doors. It was heavy, banded in metal, set deep in a frame thick as a man's arm, the door to a room built to be the coldest room in a cold building. A vault, and across the seam of it, where the door met the frame, ran a wall of ice. Not frost, ice. White and grained and old, frozen over the gap and down the hinges and pooled along the sill, sealing the door to its frame as completely as if it had been welded there. Whatever cold the rest of the building had been slowly losing for 2 years, this one room had been keeping, hoarding. The vault had iced itself shut from the inside, and it had stayed shut, and the brass key on the hair ribbon hung 40 feet away on its nail, waiting on a hand that had never come. Imani put her palm flat to the ice and took it away fast. "It's cold like it's alive," she said. "Don't." Naomi didn't know why she said it. Leave it tonight. They left it that night. They were too tired and too hollowed out, $1 between them and a whole new building of dark, pressing down, to start prying at a frozen door at 1 a.m. Whatever the vault was keeping had kept 2 years. It would keep till light. So they went back to the office, the warmest feeling dry place in all that cold acreage, and they did the thing they had done every night of their lives that they could remember, the thing that had outlasted the homes and the counties and the casseroles and even their mother. They made their bed. Naomi swept a clear place on the wood floor with the side of her boot. Imani unrolled the green sleeping bag that zipped into one, the bag that was the only reason they had stayed warm through every cold thing that had happened to them, and they zipped it into one the way they always did. They put the duffel under their 2 heads for a pillow. Naomi laid the folded bill of sale on top of the duffel, careful, the deed to everything they now owned in the world. And by the last red sliver of the phone light, she turned it over one more time to the pencil on the back, for the cold ones when they come home. "Who's the cold ones?" she said into the dark. "Don't know. Who's home?" Naomi traced the soft gray letters with a fingertip, the slant of the writing, careful, leaning right, a man's hand that had taken its time. Somebody wrote this like they knew somebody'd come, Mani, like they were leaving the light on. Imani was quiet a moment. The cold settled over the top of the bag, and they pressed in closer, back to chest, 2 of everything and half of nothing, the way they slept. "Maybe they wrote it for nobody," Imani said finally. "Maybe the man just got old and lonesome and wrote things on the backs of papers. Maybe." But Naomi did not believe it, and her sister did not believe it either, and they both lay there in the dark of a building that would not stop being cold, listening to the small tick and settle of the ice in the walls, the great machine sleeping, the river running somewhere off to the west. The phone light died and gave them over to a dark so complete it had texture. And still neither of them was afraid, which was the strangest thing of all. 2 girls alone in a condemned ruin where the law and the night both said they should have been afraid, and instead they felt, for the first time since a hospital room 6 months back, the specific and forgotten feeling of being indoors, of being kept. Naomi was nearly under when she felt her sister's hand find hers down inside the bag. One squeeze. "Stay." She squeezed back. "Stay." And they slept, the 2 of them, in the long, cold heart of the thing they had bought for $10, while a room full of people laughed. What they did not see, because the office had no window to the street and the phone light was long dead, was the man across the boulevard. He was where he was most nights, in the dark outside the shuttered barber shop, in a folding chair that knew the shape of him. The ember of his cigarette glowed once, and held and went dark. He had watched the cut in the chain link from across Mississippi Boulevard. He had seen the little light moving room to room behind the boarded windows, low and gold, going where he had not seen a light go in 2 years, going toward the office, going toward the back. And the old man had sat very still in his chair, with his coffee gone cold in the thermos beside him. And at one point he had taken off his feed cap and held it in both hands in his lap like a man does in church, or at a graveside, or in the presence of a thing he had prayed a long time for and never once expected to come. In the morning he would cross the street. He would have to. He had carried something for 20 years that belonged to the 2 girls sleeping in that building. And he was old now, and he was tired, and he had begun to be afraid he would die with it still in his hands. But that was the morning. For now there was only the dark and the cold that would not quit, and 2 sisters asleep in a dead man's office under a brass key on a faded ribbon. None of the 3 of them, the key, the vault, or the girls, yet knowing they had been waiting on each other the whole time. Morning came to South Memphis the way it always came in July, not as light at first, but as a thickening, the dark going gray, and then a dirty gold at the seams of the boarded windows, the heat already standing up off Mississippi Boulevard before the sun had cleared the rooftops. Naomi woke first. She always woke first. She lay still inside the zipped-together bag with Imani breathing slow against her spine, and for the length of one breath she did not know where she was, only that she was warm down one side and cool down the other, and that the air smelled of stone and ammonia, and that faint sweet ghost of old ice. Then she remembered. She remembered all of it at once. The gavel and the laughing and the folded $10 bill of sale and the brass key on its faded ribbon. And she opened her eyes onto the gray office of a building that was, against all the sense in the world, theirs. The knock came before she had finished remembering. 3 of them, soft, knuckle on glass, carrying down the cold rooms from the front of the building where the boarded door let onto the boulevard. Imani came awake the way she always came awake, all at once and already half upright, her hand finding Naomi's arm in the dim. They lay there, not breathing for a second, the way 2 girls learn to do when they have spent enough nights in places they had no clear right to be. Another knock, not hard. Not the flat official pounding of a man with a badge or a clipboard, the kind they both knew in their bones. This was slower than that. Almost shy, the knock of somebody asking rather than telling. Could be the law, Imani breathed. Law don't knock that soft. Could be that developer, the one off the sign. Then we don't open it. But they got up. They got up and rolled the bag, and they went down through the cold rooms together, the way they did everything, shoulder to shoulder. Naomi with the folded bill of sale already in the pocket over her heart, because some part of her had understood, since the night before, that the paper was the only wall they had. They came to the front, and through the one long gap where a board had pulled loose from the door, in the gold of early light, they saw him. An old man, black, tall once and stooped now, in clean work clothes gone soft from 1,000 washings, a feed cap in his 2 hands held down against his belt buckle. He was not looking at the gap in the boards. He was looking off down Mississippi Boulevard toward the river the way a man looks at water when he does not want you to see his face just yet. A dented thermos sat on the step beside one boot. He had been there a while. He had the patience of a man who had been waiting on this door for longer than the morning. Naomi put her eye to the gap. "We don't want trouble," she said. "We got papers. This building's ours, bought legal, county sale. So whatever it is, I know whose it is." His voice came out low and cracked and unhurried, a voice with gravel and river in it. "Saw your light last night. Going room to room." He turned then, slow, and brought his eyes up to the gap in the boards, and the first of him that the girls saw clear was that the eyes were wet and had been for some time. "I sat across that street 2 years," he said, "and never once saw a light go in that place. Then last night it went all the way to the back, to the office." He stopped. His jaw worked. "Ain't nobody known to go to that office but one man, and he's been gone." "Who are you?" Imani said, and there was an edge on it, the edge she kept for the world. "Name's Odell," the old man said. "Odell Pruitt. I drove the ice route off this dock near 40 years. Drove it, and when my knees give out, I kept the books in that office you slept in. I knew the man that built this place better than his own blood did." He wet his lips. "Open the door, daughters. I'm too old to talk through a board, and what I got to say I've been carrying 20 years. Maybe it was the word daughters. Maybe it was the wet in the old eyes, or the thermos set down so patient on the step, or only that they were 20 years old and 6 months motherless and starving for one single soul in the city of Memphis to look at them like they were worth the looking." Imani lifted the bar of 2x4 they had wedged across the door the night before. She lifted it slow, and she kept her body in front of her sister's while she did it, the way she always had, and she swung the door in on its rotted screws and let the morning and the old man both come inside. Odell Pruitt stepped over the sill into the cool of the building, and he looked at them in the full light, and he stopped like a man walking into a wall he could not see. The thermos slipped. It hit the floor and rolled, and neither of them moved to catch it. The old man stood with his cap crushed in both hands, and he looked from one face to the other and back, from Imani to Naomi to Imani, the same face twice, and the color went out of him under the brown, and his mouth came open and made no sound at all. When the sound did come, it came broken. "Lord," he said, "Lord have mercy, you got her eyes." "Whose eyes?" Naomi said, but her voice had already gone thin, because some animal part of her knew. "Your mama's." He said it, and his face came apart, slow, the way a wall comes down, not all at once, but stone by stone. I'd know them eyes in the dark. I'd know them anywhere. "I drove past your mama every day of her growing up. In the house her grandmother kept off Vance, and that woman, your people, they had just exactly that look around the eyes, like they was about to forgive you something you ain't even done yet." He had to stop. He pressed the back of one big knuckled hand to his mouth. And here it is, standing in Silas Hardaway's doorway, twice. The name landed in the cold room and sat there. "Silas Hardaway," Imani said carefully. "That's the man built this place, the Iceman." "That's the man," Odell said. "That's the man owned every brick you slept in, and the dock, and the root, and the name over the door that the rains near washed off. Hardaway Ice and Coal. 60 years it cooled half of South Memphis before the freezers come into everybody's kitchen, and the city left this corner to die." He bent, slow, his hand on his knee, and picked his thermos up off the floor, and he held it the way you hold something just to have your hands busy. "And every single day of them 60 years, he said, "Silas Hardaway kept two." Naomi felt the cold move on the back of her neck. Kept two of what? Anything. The old man's eyes had gone far off. 2 blocks of ice off the line set back when the others went out for sale. $2 laid by out of every week. Folks on this boulevard, they used to say it like a joke when I was young. "You go down Hardaway's, you best know the man keeps two." Like it was just a saying, an old man's habit. Harmless. We didn't none of us know what he was keeping two for. He looked up at them. "I believe you two been sleeping next to the answer all night. You may think you already know what the old man meant. You are close, but you do not yet know the shape of it, or the patience of it, or what 40 years of a thing like that looks like when it is finally laid out in a dead man's hand. And neither did the girls, standing in the cold with their hearts going like rabbits, only beginning to feel the floor of their whole lives start to tilt. He would not tell it all at once. He could not. A thing carried 20 years does not come out in a rush. It comes out the way water comes up through old pipe, in knocks and stops and sudden cold gushes. They took him back to the office, to the worn chair that had been his chair as much as Silas's. And Naomi poured the last of the thermos coffee into its one cup so the old man would have something to hold. And Imani sat on the floor with her back to the lockers and the little chalk twos right behind her head. And Odell Pruitt told them what he had crossed the street to tell. He told them Silas Hardaway had loved their great-grandmother, loved her young, before either of them was a thought, when this corner of Mississippi Boulevard was all wagons and sawdust and the ice went out behind mules. Loved her quiet and loved her long and was not let to have her, because there was a marriage already made for her by people who counted land and name and counted Silas short, the Iceman, the man with sawdust in his cuffs, and they pushed him out of the family the way a family will push a thing out when it does not fit the plan they have drawn. He told them Silas never married, never had a child anybody could point to. He built the plant instead, and he built it cold and good. And he watched that family from across a distance they had set. Watched the woman he loved raise a daughter, and that daughter raise a daughter, and that one raise two. Two, Odell said again, soft, and he looked at the girls. You. He watched the whole line of you come down the years like a man watching a river he ain't allowed to step in. And when your mama fell on her hard times, and the county come and the two of you got carried off in different cars to different houses in different counties, the way they do, the way they split you. His voice failed and caught. He knew. Don't ask me how. The man had ways. He had me. He had every driver and church mother and clerk on this side of Memphis owing him a kindness. He knew where they took you, both of you, every year. Naomi had stopped breathing. The folded bill of sale was in her hand, and she had pressed it flat against her knee without knowing she did it, and her thumb was moving over the place on the back where the pencil was. The soft gray, slanting letters, for the cold ones, when they come home. He wrote on the back of our paper, she said, and her voice was not steady. On the deed. It says, for the cold ones, when they come home. The old man closed his eyes. He wrote that line the year you was born, Odell said. I know because I was standing right where you're sitting when he wrote it. Two of you come into the world the same hour up at the county hospital, and didn't a soul in that proud family go to claim it, and Silas Hardaway come down to this office, and he sat in that chair, and he wrote that line on a stack of his papers, so he wouldn't lose the saying of it. The cold ones. That's you. Born to people too cold to hold you into the only warm thing he had, which was this. He opened his hand at all of it. The cork walls, the silent machines, the brine sleeping in its tank, the brass key swinging gentle on its ribbon above his head. He couldn't give you his name. They'd fixed it so he couldn't. So he gave you the only thing nobody could take back. He kept two. For 40 years, he kept two. For a while, nobody said anything. The building ticked and settled around them, the ice in the walls, the great machines, the river off to the west. Imani had her hand pressed over her own mouth, and her eyes were running, and she was not bothering to stop them. And that was a thing Naomi had not seen her sister do since the hospital 6 months back, in the room they did not talk about. It was Imani who finally turned her head, turned it slow to the back of the office, where the short passage ran off into the dark, to the heavy banded door at the end of it, sealed shut behind its old wall of white ice. And the brass key on its faded hair ribbon turned a little on its nail when the cold air moved, the way it had turned all night, the way it had been turning for 2 years, patient, waiting on a hand. That door, she said, the cold one, the one that's froze shut. She looked at the old man. What's he keeping in there, Mr. Odell? What's the two of? Odell Pruitt looked up at the brass key over his head, and his old face did something complicated, grief and relief and a kind of terror all braided together, the look of a man who has carried a stone uphill for 20 years and has just been told he can set it down. I don't rightly know all of it, he said. He never let me pass that door. Said it wasn't mine to see. Said it was for the cold ones when they come home, and not a day before. He reached up, slow, his hand trembling, and he took the key down off its nail by the soft gray ribbon, and he held it out to them across the dead man's desk, the brass dull and the teeth sharp, and the ribbon hanging from his shaking fingers like something off a child's hair. But that's you, he said. Y'all come home. And I believe to my soul the man's been keeping that room cold from the other side of the ground, waiting on this exact morning. His hand shook harder. Take it. Take the key. It was always yours. I'd just been the one holding the nail. And before either of them could lift a hand to it, before the key could pass from the old man's fingers to the girl's it had waited 20 years for, there came from the front of the building, loud and flat and certain, the official pounding they both knew in their bones, the knock of a man with a clipboard and a deadline, and a voice that did not ask anything of anybody called in through the boards of their door. Property management. This building's posted for sale clearance under city order. Whoever's inside, I'm authorized to speak for Mercer Gateway. Open up. At the desk, the brass key still hung from Odell Pruitt's open hand when the pounding came a second time, harder, and Naomi felt her own fingers stop halfway to the ribbon. The old man's eyes went up the length of the building toward the front. "Go on and answer that," he said low. "Whatever's standing in the lot, you put it to rest before you open what's back here. You don't crack that door with company in the yard." So they left the key swinging on its nail and went up through the cold rooms a third time that morning, into light gone hard and white now. Full Memphis day, the river heat already leaning in through every gap in the boards and pressing at the chill. The old plant still kept down in its bones. Two men stood out past the door. The near one was young, a polo shirt, a city notice sealed in a plastic sleeve, a clipboard he kept tapping against his leg, the one who had done the knocking and the reading. The other had come up from a clean gray SUV idling where the weeds split the asphalt, and he was the one that mattered. Pressed tan jacket, no sweat on him at all in that heat, sunglasses pushed up into hair going handsome gray. He smiled before he spoke, the smile of a man who has already added up a room and found his own name on the deed to it. "Garrett Mercer," he said. "Mercer Gateway Group. I own this corner, ladies. The lot north, the two south, the filling station, the whole row behind you. You'd be the pair that bid on the ice house off the county list." He looked from Imani to Naomi and back, and where the old man had come undone at the doubling, this one did not blink. "I'll be straight with you, because I think you'll appreciate straight. I'm going to do you a kindness most men in my chair would not. $8,000 cash to your hand today. To sign that paper, back to me." He let the number stand in the heat. He knew how to let a number stand. $8,000 to two girls with one soft dollar bill folded down in the bottom of a duffel. It was not money. It was the whole locked city swinging open on its hinges. Naomi felt it pull at her stomach like hunger does. Then she felt the deed over her heart, the $10 bill of sale with the dead man's pencil pressed into the back of it, and she did the one thing she and her sister had ever truly been good at. She stood still. She took the paper out and she held it up flat to the gap in the boards so he could read the county stamp and the date and the seal. "It's recorded," she said, "down at the register, in the book, with our two names on it. We're not signing today." The smile stayed on Mercer's mouth and left his eyes. "Course it's recorded," he said. "Easy. It's also condemned and posted for clearance under city order, which is the notice this gentleman just read you. There's back taxes on this shell older than you are. I don't strictly need a signature from anybody. I'm offering the 8 as a courtesy, because I'd sooner pay you than process you. This block comes down by fall regardless." He slid a white card through the gap and let it fall at their feet, and neither of them stooped for it. "Think on it. I'll want your answer Monday." The SUV pulled off down Mississippi Boulevard toward Vance, and the weeds it had flattened stood slowly back up in its wake. For a long moment, the two of them stared at the card lying face down on the floor. Monday. A ruin, the $10 deed, and a man who owned everything else they could see. "He can't," Naomi said. "We got the paper. You heard him." Imani's jaw was set. His kind don't carry a paper they can't win with. And from the dark at the back, the old bookkeeper's cracked voice came carrying up through the cold. "Then quit feeding that man your ears," Odell called, "and come open the one door he don't even know is here." They went back. He stood by the ice door with the key warm now from his holding it, and the door at the end of the short passage stood furred white from sill to lintel. A wall of frost grown thick over 20 winters of the machines breathing on it. The keyhole itself glazed blind. Imani dug the little camp burner out of the duffel, the same small flame they had warmed their hands over 100 nights behind 100 gas stations, and Odell showed them where to pour. Naomi ran hot water slow down the face of the frost while Imani worked at it with the flat of an old ice pick lifted off its nail. The tools of the trade still hung right where the last man set them down, and the white came away in wet gray sheets, and the cold off it stung their wrists raw. They worked the better part of an hour, turn and turn about, until the seam of the door showed black and running, and the keyhole opened its eye. Imani fit the key, and it would not turn. So Naomi closed both their hands over it, 4 hands on one cold key, the way they had met every locked thing in their lives, and they turned it together. And down inside the door, the old bolt let go with a sound like a knuckle popping. The door swung in on a breath colder than all the rest, a smell of brine and iron and kept time. A small square room, frost on every face of it, and in the center, on a raised wooden pallet, a galvanized strongbox the size of a footlocker, dull silver, beaded over, frozen near solid into its own little glacier, where the drip had pooled and set, season on season, for 20 years. They chipped it loose and carried it between them to the dead man's desk because it was too cold to hold for long, and they thawed the lid free with the last of the hot water, and it lifted. Inside, folded in oilcloth gone stiff as board, a leather ledger, a thick bundle of envelopes tied in string, and underneath, banded flat in the bottom, a sheaf of paper certificates Naomi did not at first know the look of. If you are already counting the money, you have got the wrong end of this. Imani opened the ledger. On the first page, in a careful old hand that bore down hard enough to read from the back of the paper, were 2 columns. 2. One headed Imani Brooks, in full, and one headed Naomi Brooks. And down each column, year on year, a date and a single line, their birthday. Every July of every year, written twice, once in each column, all the way down both pages and onto the next, every birthday they had spent, split into 2 houses in 2 counties. The years nobody came, the years neither of them knew the other was still breathing under the same sky. Beside each date, $1 laid by. And the certificates clipped to the back were savings bonds, dozens of them, bought $1 and $2 at a time across 20 years, half made out to Imani Brooks and half to Naomi Brooks by a man neither of them had once laid eyes on. Naomi made a sound she had never made. Imani went down on her knees by the desk with the ledger held in both hands like a thing that might take wing, reading their own names in the writing of a dead stranger. Beside every birthday, the world had let pass. The envelopes were letters, more than 40 of them, each with one name on the front, Imani on the one stack, Naomi on the other, written and dated, and never once mailed, because the county never gave Silas Hardaway an address that stayed good past a season. And it came to them both at once, the chalk 2s scarred onto every locker, the doubled marks Imani had slept her whole first night beneath. They had never been a tally of ice at all. They were a count of 2 children kept even, kept matched, set aside in equal halves, so that whichever of them was found first could never be lifted above the other. They did not go to Garrett Mercer on Monday. They went downtown instead, the 2 of them, with Odell driving his old truck slow up the boulevard, and they carried the ledger and the letters and the recorded deed into the Shelby County offices. And they did the only thing the world had ever taught them to do well. They stood still, and they laid their documents on the counter. A clerk read the deed. A legal aid lawyer up off Poplar read the letters and the ledger and got very quiet and then got very busy. The bonds were real and named and dated. The letters were a dead man's plain intent in his own hand, witnessed by 40 years of books his own driver had kept. They filed a quiet title action on Hardaway Ice and Coal and a claim in the probate court on the estate of Silas Hardaway, who had died with no wife and no child the law had ever found. A probate hold dropped over the whole estate while the court sorted the truth of it, and a hold on the estate meant a hold on the corner, and a hold on the corner meant the machines Garrett Mercer had idling for the fall had no ground left to roll onto. His clearance stalled in the very gears he had meant to grind 2 girls down with. By the turn of the year, the deed stood recorded clean in the register's book, in 2 names, exactly the way the old man had set it down to begin with. That next winter, the hard cold came down off the river, and the shelters across Memphis filled and started turning folks back into the street, and the lights of the old plant on the corner of Mississippi and Vance came on and stayed on. The twins kept the great machines breathing and threw the dock doors wide. The front room held cots and a coffee urn and a long table. The cold rooms in the back held free storage for every corner grocer and church pantry in South Memphis that could not pay to keep their food good. On the coldest night of that year, a man who had been turned from 3 doors slept warm on a cot beneath the cork walls and never knew whose hands had left the lights burning. And up over the entrance, where the rain had near scoured the old letters off, somebody climbed a ladder and painted the name back by hand, and underneath it, smaller, 2 more, Imani and Naomi Brooks, fresh white over 60 years of weather. Seen from behind in the maroon and the charcoal, 2 girls crossed the dark lot toward the glow. The door stood open, and they went inside.